Imagine for a moment a brightly lit stage. On one side, you have a brilliant astrophysicist, her mind just brimming with those elegant equations that describe the birth of stars and the grand cosmic dance of galaxies. On the other side, there's a thoughtful theologian, someone whose life is dedicated to understanding ancient texts and the profound questions of human purpose and morality. The moderator poses a simple question: where did we come from? The scientist, well, she jumps right in with this breathtaking description of the Big Bang, a singularity of unimaginable density expanding over 13.8 billion years, forging hydrogen and helium, which then clumped together under gravity to form the first stars. Those stars, in their fiery hearts, created heavier elements, seeding the universe with the very stuff we're made of. The theologian listens, patient and gentle, a smile on his face. And when it's his turn, he doesn't mention cosmic background radiation or redshift. Instead, he speaks of a divine creator, a first cause, an intentional act of love that brought existence into being. He talks about humanity's place in this creation, not as just a collection of stardust, but as beings with a soul, a conscience, and a relationship with the sacred. The audience is split. Some nod enthusiastically at the scientific explanation, while others find deep comfort and truth in the religious one. But here's the cosmic irony. The scientist and the theologian aren't even in the same conversation. They're standing back to back, shouting into different universes. This scene honestly plays out countless times, not just on debate stages, but in classrooms, at family dinner tables, and of course, all across the internet. It's a dialogue of the deaf, a cosmic misunderstanding where both parties are passionate, intelligent, and completely missing each other's point. The scientist is answering the question, how did the universe begin? With the best evidence we can gather from the light of distant stars and the laws of physics. The theologian is answering the question, why are we here? By exploring ideas of purpose, meaning, and our relationship to something greater than ourselves. They're using different languages, different tools, and really different frameworks to explore entirely different dimensions of the human experience. The result, more often than not, is a loud, confusing, and ultimately fruitless argument. It's like an expert chef and a brilliant composer arguing over the best way to create a masterpiece. The chef talks about balancing flavors, the Maillard reaction, and the texture of fresh ingredients. The composer talks about harmony, rhythm, and the emotional resonance of a minor chord. Both are masters of their craft, but they're trying to judge a symphony by how it tastes and a gourmet meal by how it sounds. The debate becomes illogical, not because one is right and the other is wrong, but because they're not even competing in the same event. Maybe it's time we took a step back and looked at the rulebook for each game. Science, at its core, is a powerful and honestly magnificent toolkit for understanding the physical universe. It operates on a simple yet profound principle-testable ideas. A scientist proposes a hypothesis, an educated guess, about how something works. For example, gravity bends the path of light. Then they design experiments to test that idea. They observe, they measure, they calculate. If the evidence supports the hypothesis, it becomes stronger. If the evidence refutes it, the hypothesis is discarded or revised, no matter how beautiful or cherished it was. This is the scientific method. It's a rigorous, self-correcting process for building a reliable map of the material world. It answers the how and what questions with stunning precision. Religion, on the other hand, comes with a completely different toolkit. Its domain is not the physical, but the metaphysical. It doesn't use telescopes or particle accelerators. It uses scripture, tradition, prayer, meditation, and community. Religion isn't trying to determine the precise temperature of the sun's core or the chemical composition of a distant planet. Instead, it grapples with questions of meaning, morality, and purpose. It asks, why should we be good to one another? Or what is our ultimate purpose in life? Or how do we find peace in the face of suffering? These are not questions that can be answered by running an experiment or solving an equation. They are questions about value, ethics, and the human spirit. The confusion really begins when we try to use one toolkit for the other's job. Imagine trying to use a stethoscope to find a distant galaxy. It's a wonderful instrument for listening to a human heartbeat, but it's completely unsuited for cosmology. Similarly, imagine trying to use a sacred text to determine the optimal trajectory for a mission to Mars. The text might offer profound wisdom on humility and perseverance, which are valuable for the astronauts, but it won't provide the necessary calculations for orbital mechanics. The conflict between science and religion is often not a conflict of facts, but a confusion of categories, a fundamental misunderstanding of what each toolkit is designed to do. So, we have two distinct quests. One is the quest to understand the machinery of the cosmos, the how of existence. The other is the quest to understand our place within it, the why of our experience. Science provides the instruction manual for the universe. It tells us the rules of the game, the physical laws that govern everything from the smallest quark to the largest supercluster of galaxies. Religion, for many, provides the reason to play the game in the first place. It offers a framework for living a meaningful life within that cosmic arena. They're not necessarily in conflict, they're simply answering different, though equally important, human questions. History is just filled with cautionary tales about what happens when these distinct domains are improperly mixed. Perhaps no story illustrates this better than that of Galileo Galilei. In the early 17th century, Galileo turned his newly improved telescope toward the heavens and saw things that no one had ever seen before. He saw mountains on the moon, challenging the idea of perfect heavenly spheres. He saw 4 moons orbiting Jupiter, proving that not everything in the cosmos revolved around the Earth. These observations provided powerful evidence for the Copernican model, which placed the Sun, not the Earth, at the center of the solar system. This was a direct challenge to the established scientific and religious orthodoxy of the time. The problem was not that the Church was inherently anti-science. For centuries, the Church had been a major patron of astronomy and other sciences, which were seen as ways to appreciate the glory of God's creation. The problem was that a specific scientific model, the Earth-centered universe of Ptolemy, had become fused with religious dogma. The church authorities of that era had used their toolkit of theology to make a definitive ruling on a question of celestial mechanics, a how question. They had declared the Earth's central position to be a matter of faith, not just a matter of physics. When Galileo came along with his telescope, his evidence was seen not as a scientific update, but as a theological threat. Galileo's conflict was not truly science versus religion. It was science versus a particular interpretation of religious doctrine that had overstepped its bounds. The church leaders were not looking through Galileo's telescope. They were looking at their sacred texts and established traditions. They were using their religious toolkit to try and solve a scientific problem, and it led to a tragic conclusion. Galileo was forced to recant his findings and was placed under house arrest for the rest of his life. It was a dark moment, not because religion is bad, but because power, mixed with dogma and a fear of change, tried to silence an empirical truth about the natural world. The ghost of Galileo, honestly, still haunts the modern debate. It serves as a powerful reminder that when any institution, religious or secular, claims absolute authority over questions outside its proper domain, it stifles progress and creates unnecessary conflict. Science must be free to follow the evidence wherever it leads, to question everything about the physical universe. And religion, if it is to provide meaning and guidance, must not chain itself to outdated scientific models of the cosmos. The universe is far grander and more mysterious than the science of any single era can fully describe. True faith, one might argue, should not be afraid of a bigger, more wondrous cosmos. One of the biggest reasons the science and religion debate gets so stuck is because of a very human, very persistent feature of our mind's confirmation bias. This is our brain's natural tendency to search for, interpret, and remember information in a way that confirms what we already believe. It's kind of like wearing glasses that only let in light that matches our favorite color. And honestly, we all do it. It's a mental shortcut that helps us make sense of a complicated world, but it can also build walls around our understanding. In the debate between science and religion, this bias acts like a powerful amplifier, turning a discussion into a shouting match where no one is really listening. For someone who firmly believes that science holds all the answers, every new discovery, from the Higgs boson to the mapping of the human genome, becomes further proof of the irrelevance of faith. They might seek out articles and documentaries that highlight the historical conflicts, like the Galileo affair, or mock religious beliefs as primitive superstitions. They might dismiss any discussion of spirituality or meaning as unscientific and therefore meaningless. Their echo chamber is built from scientific journals, skeptical podcasts, and debates where the religious side is poorly represented. They see the universe as a magnificent but purely material machine, and any evidence to the contrary is filtered out before it can even be considered. On the other side, a person of deep faith might engage in the exact same behavior, but in reverse. They might focus on the unexplained mysteries at the edge of science, like the origin of life or the nature of consciousness, and see them as definitive proof of a divine hand. They may gravitate toward communities and media that reinforce their worldview, highlighting stories of miracles or the perceived moral failings of a secular society. They might view science with suspicion, seeing it as an arrogant attempt by humanity to play God. In their echo chamber, the universe is a purposeful creation, and any evidence that suggests a random, unguided process is either ignored, reinterpreted, or dismissed as a flaw in the scientific method itself. This is where the debate becomes illogical. It ceases to be a search for truth and becomes a battle for validation. Both sides end up arguing against caricatures of each other. The scientist argues against a literal six-day creationist, ignoring the vast and nuanced theological traditions that embrace evolution and a metaphorical understanding of Scripture. The religious person argues against a cold, soulless scientist who denies all beauty and mystery, ignoring the fact that many scientists are deeply spiritual people who feel a sense of awe and wonder at the cosmos. We get trapped in our bubbles, listening only to the echoes of our own beliefs, and the real fascinating conversation that could be had between these two great human endeavors never gets a chance to begin. To truly grasp why the debate often goes nowhere, we need to talk about something philosophers call a category error. It sounds complex, but it's a wonderfully simple idea. A category error is what happens when you try to apply the properties of one kind of thing to a completely different kind of thing. The philosopher Gilbert Ryle famously described it with an analogy. Imagine someone visiting a university for the first time. They are shown the libraries, the lecture halls, the labs, and the dormitories. At the end of the tour, they ask, "But where is the university?" They have made a category error by thinking the university is just another building, separate from the parts that make it up. This is precisely the mistake we make in the science versus religion debate. We commit category errors all the time. For example, asking a scientist to prove the existence of love in a laboratory is a category error. A scientist can measure the chemical reactions that happen in the brain when we feel love, the release of oxytocin, the firing of certain neural pathways. They can observe the behaviors associated with love, but they cannot put love itself in a beaker. Love is an experience, a value, a human connection. It belongs to a different category than a molecule or an electrical impulse. Trying to measure it with the tools of chemistry is like trying to measure the color blue with a ruler. Similarly, when someone uses a religious text to make a scientific claim about the age of the Earth, they are making a category error. Sacred texts are generally not written as geology textbooks. Their purpose is often to convey truths about humanity's relationship with the divine, about morality, and about community. To treat a poetic, metaphorical creation story as a literal scientific account is to misread its purpose entirely. It's like analyzing the chemical composition of the paint used in the Mona Lisa to understand her enigmatic smile. The analysis might be scientifically accurate, but it completely misses the point of the art. It's looking for the wrong kind of information in the wrong place. The debate is littered with these kinds of logical fallacies. Can you measure hope? Can you calculate the value of forgiveness? Can you weigh a soul on a scale? Of course not. These concepts belong to the realm of human consciousness, ethics, and meaning, the traditional territory of philosophy and religion. Likewise, can you pray for the value of pi to change? Can you use faith to alter the laws of gravity? Of course not. Those are properties of the physical universe, discoverable through the methods of science. The conflict is a phantom, born from the simple mistake of not recognizing that some questions are for the laboratory and some are for the heart. So, what is the path forward? Must we choose between the cold, hard facts of science and the warm, meaningful narratives of religion? I don't think so. That's a false choice, a limitation we place on ourselves. Instead of seeing them as two warring armies, imagine them as two different windows in the same house. One window looks out upon the vast, intricate landscape of the physical cosmos. Through it, we can see the breathtaking spectacle of colliding galaxies, the birth of stars, and the slow, patient unfolding of evolution. This is the window of science, offering a view that is staggering in its scale and detail. It gives us knowledge. The other window looks inward. It looks into the landscape of the human heart, at our hopes, our fears, our capacity for love, our search for meaning, and our sense of right and wrong. Through this window, we explore the things that make our lives worth living beyond mere survival. This is the window of philosophy, of art, of religion. It doesn't give us data on the expansion rate of the universe, but it helps us grapple with what to do with the precious brief time we have in it. It gives us wisdom. Why would we ever want to board up one of these windows? To do so would be to live in a house with only a partial view of reality. A complete human experience arguably needs both. Science can tell us that we are made of stardust, a fact that is both humbling and exhilarating. It connects us to the cosmos in a deep, physical way, but it cannot tell us how to be a good friend, how to find courage in the face of loss, or what it means to live a noble life. Religion and philosophy for billions of people provide the frameworks for exploring these very questions. A person can marvel at the process of evolution by natural selection and also believe that this magnificent process is an expression of a divine will. The two ideas are not mutually exclusive. They are simply answering different questions. Ultimately, the loudest voices in the science versus religion debate are often the ones at the extreme ends of the spectrum, shouting from their respective echo chambers. But most people, I suspect, live their lives somewhere in the middle. We use the gifts of science every day, from the medicine that keeps us healthy to the technology that connects us across the globe. And many of us also seek comfort, community, and moral guidance from traditions that have been passed down through generations. The cosmos is vast enough, and the human experience is rich enough to accommodate both the Hubble Space Telescope and the human heart. Perhaps the most logical step is to stop arguing and simply open both windows.